Hello and welcome to Everybody Likes Music. I'm James, and as always, I'm joined by my good friend Ben.
Good to see you.
And this week, our special guest is Stuart Henderson. Hello, Stuart. How are you?
Hi, guys. Very good, thanks.
It's great to see you. So, Stuart is a former Scots Guard and also a very, very talented trumpet player. You've played jazz, classical, sort of a bit of everything. So, should we start off with because this episode, it's around Remembrance Day this time. Do you want to talk a little bit about, first of all, your experience of music being in the army?
Yeah, sure. I'll go back a little bit earlier. So I started when I was 7. And I was taught by an old coal miner into St Helens, that was in the northwest. And that was great. So I started on the cornet and then progressed through a local wind band. And when I got to 16, I kind of didn't know what to do, really, whether to go to music college or I kind of wanted some money. So I thought, I'll join the army. They pay you to be a musician. And my brother had, a couple of years earlier, had wanted to join the RAF as a musician, but there were no vacancies. So a family friend knew about, was a sergeant major in the guards, in the musicians in the foot guards. And so he said, it's the same sort of thing, same deal. You're a musician first, a soldier second. So that kind of ticked the boxes. So my brother joined, and then like 2 years after him, I thought, I'll give it a go. So at September 1980, I packed my suitcase and got the train down to Purbright in Surrey and joined as a junior musician in the Guards division in the Scots Guards.
Oh, brilliant. And so you say, obviously, they talk about it being musician first, sort of soldier second. How much of sort of the soldiering aspect did you actually have to do, and how much of your time was music?
Yeah, I mean, the role has changed a lot more now. During my army career, the soldiering part got slightly more important because of less numbers in the defence services. So we did things like learning to shoot and army bandsmen, as they were called back in those days, were medical orderlies, as I think it's going back through history, stretcher bearers and things like that. So we were medically trained as medical assistants. So you had that. And at some point during my army career, I managed to get in the back of an ambulance and cover the ambulance strike, which was an experience, I can tell you. Being in charge of an ambulance, taking casualties to hospital was a bit, beyond my remit. But it was. So it was at most, I would say, 80% music, 20% soldiering. Obviously, the discipline, the parade work, and marching is obviously part of being a military musician. So you have to get used to that.
In that environment, being a musician within a sort of different, non sort of external music framework, what's music mean to everyone who's part of that sort of? Because it's very connected. You're all sort of very connected to the people you're working with, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a massive range of people who go for it to be a forces musician, and they've all got different backgrounds, but they all bring a sort of different musical experiences and tastes, and it's really great. And you find the guys who are into the same sort of music as you, and you'll go and see concerts or stuff, or get groups together with those people. But it's and the music you play, obviously it's like wind band repertoire. Anything from that, and the guards have in my days they had separate orchestras, so string orchestra, so you can do orchestral, military band, wind band, and big band and jazz, all kind of rolled into one sort of. When I was there, the band was about 59, 60 strong musicians. So yeah, it's interesting.
So obviously, being in the army, I'd imagine you've got to travel quite a lot around the world. Were there any sort of standout, particularly with your music, standout sort of concerts or events that you got to play at?
Incredible amount all over the world. One of the first things I did in my first year in the band, which after my training I went to the band in 1983, was a 3-month tour of America and Canada, North America. We played at, I think it was 68 venues in 75 days. So it was a
Tired lips
pretty,
after that, I
yeah,
imagine.
absolutely. And what we were doing, sort of marching displays in arenas like Madison Square Gardens and Boston. I can't remember where the Boston Celtics play and the LA basketball places, and uncovered ice rinks and stuff like that. It was just I think I was 19 at the time. It was just kind of blew me away, you know.
Yeah, and what sort of reception did you get coming in as sort of the Scots Guards for this sort of perhaps an American crowd? Because obviously they're quite, typically they're quite proud of their own sort of military.
Yeah. There are occasions where we played, and I think, especially in Canada, I think the Rolling Stones were doing a concert the same night, and I think we got more audience than the Rolling Stones did because of the Scottish. Because I was in the Scots Guard, so we had the Black Watch bagpipes with us. So it was the expat Scots brigade in Canada flocked to the arena, but that was great. Other things were in 1997 when Hong Kong was handed back to China. I was part of the band. The Scots Guards band were the band that played at the closing ceremony when the flag was handed over at midnight to the Chinese representatives by Prince Charles, and I was in charge of the fanfare trumpeters at that moment in the arena in Hong Kong. And then as soon as we finished, we were on a plane out of there. So that was interesting.
How does it feel to be part of those moments in history then, as a musician, to be able to be the one who's playing at those events?
Yeah, it doesn't kind of register that much with you at the time because you're just concentrating on not getting anything wrong, coming in at the wrong place. You know, when you've got to play a fanfare for a dignitary coming up or a specific moment, it's like you're kind of concentrating on that rather than, oh, right, this is great. I'm here in this magical arena in Hong Kong, and who'd have thought that? If you start thinking about that, I think then that's the time where mistakes happen, and you've got to really concentrate on, playing one of those long trumpets with a heavy flag on the end is quite a strenuous thing anyway. So you've got to be ready to do that. But yeah, it's when you look back on it, my mum's got all the videotapes off the TV, of course, and so you look back on it, you think, wow, that was a pretty special occasion. My brother was one of the fanfare trumpeters at Prince Charles and Diana's wedding, and it's kind of those sort of things. You think, and you still got the order of service, and you think, oh blimey, that was a bit of history, really.
Did it become a little bit of a competition with your brother? Who can do the bigger event?
Yeah. Well, he left the army after about 9-10 years, and then I carried on and did 25 years and ended up as a sergeant major. So I got to see and do quite a bit more than he did. So it's kind of like one-upmanship. Yeah. Win
all
for me.
Family dinners and
Yes. Yeah. I'm trying to think of other things as well, but there are loads of things.
Well, we mentioned obviously Remembrance Sunday and Armistice Day that's coming up very soon. No doubt you'll have played at all sorts of events over your career, both in the army and I'm sure after. What did those events mean to you to be able to sort of play for those?
Well, I think it's really poignant, and I did the Cenotaph Parade countless times during my army career, and it was one of the most moving experiences you could ever experience. Just the music, the selection of music on that, Elgar and Beethoven Funeral March and things like that's really poignant and gets you thinking. And just standing there in Whitehall looking at the cenotaph is just it does. It makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. It really is.
Yeah, I must say it's one of the most powerful images I think that you can see on the telly, certainly around that time, is to watch the cenotaph and all those dignitaries sort of laying the wreaths. And
how important do you think music is to those events, to remembering horrible wars and loss of life. How poignant do you think music is?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. It's one of the most important things. It gives people a sense of occasion, and yourself. If you watch a film that doesn't have a great soundtrack, then it's not quite the same thing. We always used to say that we used to do Changing the Guard in London, absolutely regular as clockwork. And there wouldn't be the same amount of tourists there to watch it if there wasn't a band playing music to march the soldiers over and to give you that kind of sense of occasion. And I think it just gives everyone a sense of this means a great deal to everyone. I think I don't know how to explain that any better than that.
Is there a piece of music that you would say you could listen to, or you just sort of think of as that is kind of a piece of music that kind of epitomizes all of these emotions?
Yeah, Nimrod from the Variations. Yeah, you play that every cenotaph parade. We played that, and it's I think we played it. We were on changing the day that Princess Diana was killed. We were on Changing the Guard at Buckingham Palace, and so we had to change all the music, because what happens on a Changing the Guard is the band march the soldiers over, and then while the soldiers are changing the sentry duty, the band does a little mini concert in the forecourt of Buckingham Palace, and we had to change all the music to Nimrod and things like that, and while people were just throwing flowers at the gate, and that was something I'll never forget. It's incredible.
So moving on, sort of, you left the army. Whenabouts did you leave?
2005.
2005. And was that when you found your love for jazz, or had that already sparked?
No, that was already well and truly up and running. I'd always been encouraged to play tunes without music as a kid growing up, and had been in little jazz bands through the wind band that I was in, and they set up a big band during that period as well, so I played in that. And I didn't know which route to go down. Once I was in the army, I thought maybe I would go the classical route, and then I thought, no, my transposition's rubbish, so I'm gonna. And I've always enjoyed the freedom of improvising and that style. Jazz could take you, the style of music that you can play. That freedom of not having to stick to playing the same melody. You can play it so many different ways. The same melody, one night it can be totally different to the next.
It almost sounds to me like it's kind of the furthest thing possible away from
the discipline
from
and
a
the
military
marching.
band.
Yeah, but it's a great outlet. I mean, one of the times I was in America with the army, I was lucky enough to see Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers, and that just kind of, wow, it was incredible. And I think things like that really stick with you, and you kind of, okay, I want to do that. So here we go, and luckily enough, I have an aptitude. I've got a decent ear, and kind of one thing took, went from the next sort of thing.
So what would you say was your kind of the start of your sort of more purer jazz career?
Yeah, I think when I moved to Reading, I moved to Reading in 1990, and I met some guys who were into the sort of more freer side of jazz, sort of improvising just very, very freely, and playing in different places and outdoors and in the environment. And I think that really kind of opened my eyes to what you could do with music, and getting people who are of a like mind just to experiment and play together. And that was an incredible eye opener. And I kind of think that started my journey. And then I met some other jazz musicians around here and started doing a regular night in a bar, which was originally called Bukowski's, and then it was called JW's on the corner of Gun Street, so near where the Purple Turtle is now. That was on the corner. I think it's called Sahara Bar or something now. But we used to do a regular night in there. It was packed with people, and so I kind of, that was my introduction into doing regular jazz gigs, and came from there. We formed a 10-piece funk band, and all sorts of things happened. Yeah.
Fantastic. You're a big part of the community in Reading when it comes to music. I mean, I've seen you play with your big band in the local churches, or just smaller intimate gigs in the pubs round town. What do you think? I don't know, there's two questions here. Which one do you prefer, small or big? And then what sort of do you love about bringing jazz to the community?
Yeah, I think the small intimate gigs are just brilliant. One, because the people can really get up close to the music, and feel that they're kind of almost in the band, if you know what I mean. And you don't have to use amplification, which playing the trumpet through a mic is great. It's a particular skill, and you can do a lot of things with it, like with the harmon mute, getting close to the mic. But I think just hearing the natural sound of instruments is the greatest thing possible. So I like the small venues. Yeah, everybody loves playing to a big crowd in a big venue, and that's a real buzz. But I think the smaller venue where you can actually, I mean, jazz is like telling a story. Every time you play an improvised solo, you're trying to tell a story. You're trying to make the audience believe what you're saying is straight. It's straight from your mind. It's straight from your heart, because that's the only way you can. I mean, if you play regimented sort of licks or whatever, it just doesn't make music for me. You've got to absolutely believe that you're telling a story, and you bring that audience with you on the journey.
And that brings us quite nicely onto the tracks that you've chosen for our playlist. So the first one, Blue and Green, Miles Davis, obviously an iconic trumpet player. What draws you to that?
Well, I mean, that whole album, Kind of Blue, was just revolutionary. You'd had, I think my favourite era in jazz is from like mid-50s to late 60s, so after bebop, post-bop, as you call it. And this was kind of revolutionary in the way that he just went into the studio with some ideas of chords and some melodies, and they just kind of recorded it. And yeah, So What is great, and All Blues is fantastic, and everything else on there is great. But I just think Blue and Green is just a beautifully simple melody that floats over these beautiful changes, and it just, I think it just takes you somewhere else, like music should do. That's my opinion anyway.
Yeah, it's kind of from when I listen to it, it's one of those ones that you can kind of really just, like you say, just takes you somewhere else and just lose yourself in that one, because you can really hear him when he's playing it.
Yeah, it's heart and soul on a plate for everybody. You know, that's all it is. Yeah.
And then we move on to something like Joy Spring. What draws you to Joy Spring?
Well, I think it's just the technical efficiency and brilliance of Clifford Brown as a trumpet player. He's just, well, I mean, he had a very short life. I think he was dead at the age of 25, and was just the most incredible, technically efficient and brilliant jazz trumpet player I've ever heard. His phrasing was incredible. And Joy Spring was a tune I heard when I was young, and I thought, oh, blimey, that's a difficult tune. I always want to play that. And I've been lucky to be able to play it quite a lot and record it, and it's just I just love the tune, and it's easy. It's immediately recognisable, where it flows over the 2-5-1s all through it. You know,
I'm just thinking, just listening to you talking about the fact that you've sort of played it a lot and the way you sort of talk about jazz. Do you think it's possible to get bored of a jazz standard, or do you think there's so much variety that you can bring to it that you could play it again and again?
I think, yeah, absolutely. You can play. I don't get bored of playing any jazz standard, because you can always play it in a different way. You can change the time signature. You can change the feel. You can changing the time is quite good with it, or change the way you play it. Even just changing the tempo and approach in so many different ways. Then it's still the same great tune, but you can really freshen it up every time you play it by doing something different with it.
Yeah, and I suppose likewise with listening, it's you can say, "Oh, I've listened to Joy Spring," but then someone else can say, "No, but have you listened to this version of Joy Spring?" Or, and so I suppose
have you heard this guy? Yeah, have you heard this guy play it? Have you heard what he does with it? Yeah, yeah.
Actually, talking about your tracks that you enjoy listening to, on those, there must have been long journeys on those tours when you're traveling around America, Canada, and all over the place. What was there any sort of particular song that was always played on any journey, but with all the band listening?
I don't think so, because we were in the era of the Sony Walkman. So, and as soon as you went to places like Hong Kong or the States, where it was a lot cheaper to buy stuff over there, guys were just like, we'd get into a hotel and it was like a bomb burst to the nearest record store, and or in Hong Kong down to where all the electronic gadgets was for sale at so much cheaper than they are in the UK. So guys were coming back with personal CD players and things like that, and obviously cassettes in the start of it. So I think guys just used to, and I just went to local record stores and had a browse, and I think that's where there was a great American bass player and singer called Michelle Undegeocello, and I think I listened to her album on my second States tour in '98. I think I listened to that non-stop almost. It's great. I was kind of getting a bit more into the R&B and hip hop and kind of that back checking out all that stuff. So I think. And like you say, so many different musical tastes. Guys like to listen to what they like.
So moving slightly away from jazz, you also chose a trumpet concerto as one of your tracks, which I think you said means quite a lot to you.
Yeah, it was. So having joined the army straight from school, I didn't do any further education, but they brought in while I was in the army that you could do external diplomas and degrees, and I think they had a connection with Salford University, but I did licentiate at Trinity College, and it was in my recital I played this trumpet concerto, Aratunian, and I love it because there's some great technical bits in it, but there's some absolutely beautiful melodic movements, and I think there are two slower parts that have got beautiful melodies, and so you've got that technical wizardry and you've got the lyrical playing, which I so enjoy doing, and you can stretch that around. I think the actual concerto is harder for the pianist because he's got to replicate a 70-piece orchestra or something to back you. So my accompanist really worked his socks off on that.
I can imagine.
So, and I ended up coming out with an honours diploma after that, a distinction diploma, which was really good. So it kind of means quite a bit to me.
Yeah, and likewise, you talk about Carnival of Venice, particularly the Del Steger's version. Yeah,
that's so. Growing up in the Northwest, it's kind of prime brass band country, and those Arban studies and Arban solos, the Carnival of Venice, and so I used to kind of hack my way through them and getting that triple tonguing right and stuff like that, and. When I was at Nella Hall, which is the Army School of Music, there was a big cornet player competition. So all the cornet players on that course for that year had to take part in this competition, or were encouraged to take part in the competition. And I played this Carnival of Venice vault by Del Steigers and actually won the competition. So that kind of means I've still got a silver medal up on my shelves at home. They're looking at me every day. And it's a real sort of proud moment for me to play that. And it's a great, of all the versions of the Carnival of Venice, there's the Arban wrote a very difficult one, and there's one for flute, I think, as well. But this is my favourite one, and I kind of could play it quite well, so I thought, I'll enter with that piece of music, and it stuck with me.
I think it's amazing how music can stick with you. It can be sort of a stepping point in your life, can't it? Really.
Absolutely, yeah. It is, and you just hear a few bars of music, and you can be instantly taken back to somewhere, sometime, someplace. It's brilliant.
Brilliant. Well, that brings us sort of towards the end of our interview. Unfortunately, I could honestly sit here for hours.
We'll just go and have a chat when the cameras stop rolling.
So the last thing to talk to you about then is have you got much sort of going on, regular gigs coming up? Obviously, it's been a quiet year recently, but things are starting to pick up. Have you got a lot going on?
Yeah, I'm at this weekend. I'm down in Bristol at St George's Hall, doing a big band that's backing Paul Jones, the great blues singer. I'm actually on a boat on Friday night from Henley, a gin and jazz thing. But I've just got a new album out as well, which is I was saying that I love the music from the jazz from the mid-50s to the late 60s, and that was the kind of classic era of Blue Note Records. So this is a CD or an album that is a tribute to the great musicians and writers and the great bands of the Blue Note classic era, and it's called Back to Blue Note. So that's available on Bandcamp.
Brilliant.
If anyone wants to have a check that out.
Yeah,
we'll link things everywhere wherever you listen to this podcast or watch us. We'll make sure you can all find Stu's album.
And people in Reading can check me out at the last Sunday of the month in the little pub called The Retreat in St John's Hill.
I can recommend that gig. I went to one right before the pandemic, not too long before the pandemic, and it was one heck of a gig.
Let's see as COVID safely as we can. See if we can pack out the retreat.
It doesn't take much.
Thank you very much, Stuart Henderson. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you.
It's been great, guys. Really enjoyed it.
And thank you for sharing with us why you like music.
If you enjoyed that episode of Everybody Likes Music, don't forget to subscribe to the channel below. And follow us on Spotify, where you can find all of the music that we talk about in the podcast, as well as some of James's and mine's favourite tracks.